let's try to create an object of the snake class so we can see what's happening. So let's create on the new, so I went back to my main file, and then on the new function I'm just gonna create a self.head, which is gonna be the head of the snake. Let's just create a snake object in here just to test. So remember, we need to pass the game. So the game, we're inside of the class game, so we're just gonna pass self, and then the coordinates, I'm just gonna put 10 and 10 for now, just so we can test. And yeah, if you run this, obviously nothing's gonna happen. It's gonna give you an error because we haven't initialized the groups yet. So to do that, we have to create a self.allSprites, because this is what we're calling in here, right? So game.allSprites, yeah. So allSprites equals pygame.sprites.group. So it's still, if I try to run this, now it's not giving you an error anymore. It's because we have the sprites group created, but we don't see the snake, the head of the snake yet. That's because we need to draw into the screen. So let's go into our draw function, and in here, as I said, we can draw all these sprites together. So instead of doing like self.head.draw, like creating a draw function for every class and all of that, we can just call the self.allSprites.draw, because it has a draw function already on the groups. And inside here we just pass the screen where we want to draw the sprites. So the same way with the line here, first argument we need to pass where we want to draw it, so it's in the screen. So in here's the same thing, we pass this screen. And now if we try to run this, we see that our little square, green square, is drawn on the screen, but I passed the argument 1010, so it should have been drawn like around here, right? So that's not the case. It's because in our sprites, in our snake class, we only did this time style size on the update function, and we haven't called this update function yet. Alright, so let's call that. So let's go into the updates, and we have to do self.allSprites.updates. So now we are calling the update function into the sprite. So now we should get that time style size. So if I run this, now you see it's down here. So it's on the 10 square, 10 across on the X and 10 on the Y. So if I change this, let's put this 5, 5. Try running this again. You see now it's on the 5 across and 5 long. Okay, so now that we have the head drawn into the screen, let's try to make this move actually. So it's always going to be moving in one direction unless we press a key up or a key down to move the direction, right? So let's just try to make it move to the right first. So for that, we're gonna go into our update, and so do you remember it said that we have this while loop, so every time it loops through this is 1 frame of the game. So we check the events, and then we check the updates, and then we draw again. So let's just try to make this move to the right. So that means we have to increase the X value to plus, right? So we're gonna take the self.head, which is an object of the class snake that we define here, and we're gonna increase the X value. So every time we increase the X value, we are gonna increase by the tile size. So if I go into the main, into the updates, and we do self.head, which is the object of the snake, if I do a plus equals 1, for example, then we should, let's see what's going to happen. It's going to give me an error because it's int. Okay. Of course, yeah, we need to call the x. So self.head.x, and we need to increase by 1. So if we do this, you see it's moving to the right, but it's not clearing the screen. So we're just moving and we're just drawing every tile to the right, but we need to clear the screen before we draw again, right? So to clear the screen, we go into the draw function, and we're just gonna say self.screen, which is our display, .fill with the background color. So every time it goes into the update, it updates the X value by 1, and then it goes into the draw. It clears the screen, so we draw the screen with the background color, and then we draw the grids, and then we draw all the sprites. Actually, we're going to put the grid after the sprites. So we're going to draw the sprites first, and then we're going to draw the grid on top of the sprites, and then we flip the display. So now if I try this, you see now it's clearing the screen every frame, and we have this animation going one by one. So when I said in the settings here, I put the speed as 10. So if you want it to be slower, you can put it less. So if I put it 5, for example, and I click on it, so it's a bit slower. We can put it very fast as well. Let's try 30. It might be too fast though. That's very fast. So let's just go back this to 10 to do some tests. So yeah, so it's moving. Now let's try to do the orientation. So if we press the key down or if we press the key up, it should move the sprite up or down or left or right. I'm going to, let me see if I can explain this better. So the sprite is going, it can either go to the right, to the left, up, sorry, and down, right? So we're gonna create a variable called orientation, which is gonna take these values. So if the orientation is 0, that means the head of the snake is gonna be going to the right. If the orientation is 1, it's gonna be up, and if it's 2, oh, this is very bad drawn with my mouse. If it's 2, it's gonna be going to the left, and if it's 3, it's gonna go down. So let's set this variable in our class in here. So we're gonna do self.orientation, and we're gonna pass it 0 because we're gonna start the snake going to the right every time we start the game. And then we're going to the events. So we need to check for the key presses. So if we press the key down, then the orientation is to change for 3. If we press the key left, the orientation changed to 2, and if we press up, the orientation changed to 1. And then on the updates here, we're gonna check for all those keys. So if the orientation is 0, then we do plus equals 1 to the x. If the orientation is 1, which is up, then we do a y minus 1, which is going up, and then all of the other ones. So let's set the keys first. In here we're checking for the event type pygame.quit. Now we're gonna check if the event.type is equals to pygame.keyDown. That means we're gonna check if we're pressing any keys. So if we're pressing any keys, then we need to check if the event.key is equal to the key that we're pressing. So let's do pygame.key. Is it up? Yeah. So K underscore up, that means the key up on your keyboard. And if you like to do WASD as well, you can put pygame.key or events.key equals to pygame.k underscore W. Whoops, W. That means the W key. So if you press W or the key, the up key, the up arrow key, then we need to change our orientation to 1. So if we press the up key, so set in that diagram here, we change the orientation to 1. Then if the event.key is equal to pygame.k underscore down, or event.key equals pygame.k underscore s, which is down, we'll change the self orientation to 3. And another one, so let me just copy this. It's gonna be key left, and this is A, and the next one is gonna be key right, and this is gonna be D. So the left, it's number 2, and right is number 0. There we go, and number 0. Okay, so now we are checking for all the key presses, and we're just changing the orientation of the snake. Now let's just change the orientation of the snake in the update section. So the snake is first going to the right, so we're gonna check if self.orientation is equals to 0, which is to the right, then the snake goes to the right. And elif self.orientation is equals to 1, that means the head needs to go up, so we're gonna change the y coordinates by a -1, because as we said, the 0, 0 is on the top left corner, so this down we increase the y, and to the right we increase the x. So if we're going up, we need to decrease the y. And then elif self.orientation is equals to 2, that means we're going to the left, so the head's x needs to decrease the x value. And the last one is orientation equals 3, and the self.heads.y needs to go down, so it's plus equals 1. Okay, so if I try to run this, and then if I press the keys, so I'm pressing the key up or right, left, down, so we're changing the orientation, right? But right now, if I'm going to the right and I press the left key, it will change to the left. But that's not good if you have the body of the snake, because then that means you're just gonna hit the snake straight away and you're gonna lose. So that's not very fun. So in the events here, instead of changing straight away to the orientation, we're gonna first check if the orientation is not the opposite, right? So for the key up, we need to check if self.orientation, so we need to check if it's not equals to 3. So if we are not going down, then we can press this key and we can change the orientation to 1, right? So if the snake is going down, that means we're going 3, and we try to press the up key, nothing's gonna happen. So we're gonna avoid that clashing straight away with the body. And then if the snake is going to 0 to the right, and we've pressed the left key, we're not gonna be able to go to the left. We have to go either up or down before we go into the left. And then if we're going down, we need to check for not self.orientation equals. So if we're going, so this is 1, right? We need double equals in here. So if the orientation is not going up, then we can change to down. The same thing here. So if not self.orientation equals 0, then we can go to the left. And also here, orientation equals to 2. Wait, we need a if not in here. Then we can go to the right. So if we're not going to the left, then we can go to the right. I hope that makes sense. So when I start the game, if I'm going to the right and I try to press left, nothing happens. And if I go to the left, I try to press right, nothing happens. Down, so going up, I press down, nothing happens. Okay, so now we have all the orientations done and all the key presses. So now what we're gonna try to do is to increase the body of the snake. So this is pretty easy. So we're going to create a list. So let's say self.snake parts maybe, and we create a list, an empty list. And then, so in the game, every time we eat a piece of food, the snake increases, right? So every time we eat a piece of food, we're gonna append another snake object to the end of the snake parts. So we're gonna have the head, which is the first element, and every time we eat a food, we're just gonna append the parts in here to the end of this list, and it's always gonna go to the end of the snake. So just for testing now, we're gonna append another 2 pieces in here to see how it works. So we're gonna append the snake object, and we're gonna pass the self, and we're 5, 5. So the snake's gonna start going to the right. Let's append those 2 body parts to the left of the head. So that means we're going to use the same Y, but 1 less X, right? And then we do the same thing. So right now we're appending the head to 5, 5, and then we're appending 1 body part to 4, which is 1 to the left, and 5, the same X, and 3 and 5. So let's see if I run this. Okay, so we have the head is just going away from the body, right? Because we didn't write anything to check to make the body follow the head. So, but we have those 2 body parts in there. So now we're gonna write a little piece of code to make every element on this list to follow each other. So the first element is gonna follow the head. The second element is gonna follow the first part of the body, and so on. So if you have more body parts, they're all gonna follow the one before. Okay, and to do that, we're going to do that in the update section. So we have the sprites update, we check where's the snake's going. So let's just give it a little bit of space in here, and we're gonna track and move the body parts. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to explain these parts, but it might be a bit more confusing. So first we're gonna create an x and y variable, and we're gonna give the x and y to the heads.x and self.heads.y. So we're just taking the position of the head x and the position of the head y, and we're storing them into the x and y variables. Now we need to do a loop in here to loop through the body parts, right? To do this, we're gonna do a loop in here. So we're gonna loop through the list of the body parts. So we're gonna do for body in self dot snake parts. And inside of this loop, we're gonna create a temporary x and y variables, temp x, temp y, which we're going to store the body dot x and the body dot y. Okay, so in these temporary variables, we're going to the loop through the list. We're gonna go for this, the first element on the list. We create temporary variables for the x and y, and we're gonna store those in these temporary variables, right? The x and y, the x and y. And then we're going to take this body x and the body y, and they are going to be equals to x and y, which is this, right? So the first time we go through the loop, we're taking the first body part, we are assigning the x and y of that body part to this temporary variable, and then we're going to change. That's why we need to assign this first, because we're going to have to replace it after. So we replace the x and y by the head. So that means every time the head moves to the right, we're replacing the first body parts with the heads x and y. And then we need to do x and y. We need to change the x and y value for this body x and body y. Sorry, not the body, the temp. That's why we store those in a temporary variable because we had to keep track of this because we're changing it, and then we take this. So the next time is going to go to the next objects on this list. We're going to do the same thing, but then instead of appending to the head, we're going to get the x and y from the previous body. So let me see if I run this. Nothing is happening right now. Let me see why. Okay, so this is not working is because I made a typo in here. So yeah, this is the body. I put body y and y is equal to x and y. So if we go up or down, then the body follows, but not on the x. So this is body x in there. So now if we run this, now the body is following. And if we change direction, it goes as well, and we can't change direction, the opposite direction, right? So now the body is following. Okay, nice. Okay, so I think now we should create the food class. So we can put a little food in our game and do the tests and do the collisions. So when the snake head hits a food, it has to increase the body and all of that. So let's go to our sprite class. And in here we're going to create a class called food. Oops, food. And again we're gonna take the pygame.sprites.sprite, and it's gonna be pretty much the same as this one. So I'm just gonna copy this init methods down here, but we're gonna change the color of the food to blue, and we're also gonna have the updates function. It's gonna be the same. So in the snake class we have the body collision, but in the food class we're gonna have food collision. So food collision, which is gonna check to see if the snake or if the head of the snake hits one of the foods. That means he ate one of the food, right? So right now we can test this as well. We can just create a little foods in our main and the new here. So just give a bit of a space, and we can do self dot food equals food objects. We pass self and put on the, so we're on 5, let's put on 10, and we're gonna put in the same x. So when we run this, so we have that little food in there. Let's just increase this one a bit. And when we run this, so we see the snake and we have the little food in here as well, right? But nothing is happening when we go on top of the food. So we need to create this collision. And to do so, we're gonna go back into the food class and we're gonna check for food collision. That means we have to check for the head of the snake X and Y position if it's the same as the food's X and Y, right? So that means they're in the same square. So then there will be a food collision in there. There will have a collision. And then if that's, so we're gonna have a check to see if that's true. And if that's true, then we do something. Okay, so in here we're gonna do if self.game. So we're gonna call self, which is the food, and then we're calling game, which is specifying here. So every time we create a new object, we pass the game into it. So that's why we have the game in here as well. And we can call things that are in the game class. Okay, so self.game, head, which is the head of the snake, x, which is the x value of the snake. So we're going to check if that is equals to the food's x, so self.x. And we need to check also for the y. So the same thing, game.head.y is equals to self.y. And if this is true, then we'll just return true. If not, we return false. Okay, so we just have a boolean in here. Now let's go back into our main, and where do you want to check that? So I guess it's gonna be on the update. Let's go give some space. So let's check for food. So self.food, which is the food object, dot food collision. And so if that returns true, then we need to delete the food from there, and we need to increase the body part as well. So actually we're not going to be deleting the food, so we're going to have only one food object, and every time the snake eats the object, instead of deleting and creating another one, we're just going to move its position. And then we're going to have a little check as well to see if the position of the food is not in the snake body as well. So let's just try to increase the snake body first. We need to append to the snake parts another snake object. So we increase the snake, right? So the snake is going to take the self, and then on the x and y, we're just going to give it the last element on this list, x and y. So we're just going to append on top of the last element, and then we will move towards the back of the snake basically. So in here we're gonna take the self, the snake parts, and to reach the last element on this list you just call it -1. So you know the index. So if we call it 0, we're accessing the first index of the list, 1 is the second index of the list, the second element of the list. So if we put -1, we are always accessing the last element. So it doesn't matter how many elements is in there, we're always accessing the last one. So we're going to access the last element dot x and the self dot snake parts, the last element dot y. Okay, so we did if If we have a food collision, then we append. So let's try this. There we go. So we have this. Now we have 4 snakes. So if we go again, we have 5. So every time we hit the food, we get a new one. I know there's a little glitch in here. There's this green thing that appears in here, but we're gonna fix that. So you see, every time I go over the food, it increases the length of the snake. Okay. Okay, so and to fix that little glitch that appears in there, we just actually need to update the sprites after we append the snake. That's a very easy fix in here. So I'm just gonna put a little note here, just update all sprites, and this is check for food collision, or check if the snake eats the food. So now that I put the update after we append the next body part, so if we do this, we shouldn't have that little glitch in there anymore. And we still have, every time we go over the food, we append a new object snake to the list. Right?